Canadian Kyle here, and welcome to the Wealth Owners Podcast. Now, this is not the full interview. For the full interview, link below, thewealthownerspodcast.ca, where it includes the full interview, including the Vault segment, which is my favorite segment. It's mentorship-like questions, and I gain a ton of value from them. So go to the link. If you want to stick around YouTube, that's fine. Just make sure to like, subscribe, and share to get it out into the YouTube universe. Thanks. Enjoy. Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Owners Podcast, and today I'm joined with David Stein. He's the CEO and president of Kuya Silver. The ticker symbol is KUYA on the CSE and KUYAF on the OTCQB. And their flagship project is the silver project in Peru, Bethania Silver. So David, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kyle.
Excited for this one. It's pleasure's all mine. So the first question I always ask every guest that's new to the show is, what were you doing when you were my age? So what were you doing from 20 to 25 years old?
Well, so when I was 20, I was still in university. And I ended up staying on to do a master's degree. So I was actually doing a Bachelor of Geological Engineering. And then I stayed on to do a master's degree in geology, paid for by Barrick Gold, actually. And so that was a great opportunity. So I stuck around to do that. I'm thinking that would have taken me to 22 or 23. And then by the time I was 25, I was an analyst at Sprott Securities, which was the predecessor to Cormark Securities. So I decided to jump right into Bay Street, even though I was, educated as a geologist. I was, as a master's student, I was really interested in the markets. I was doing my own trading at the time. And, once I sort of realized that there was actually this job out there that I could analyze stocks and also use my geological background and kind of marry the two things together, I decided that was like the perfect job for me. So I started going out and going to interviews and trying to get that job. And fortunately, Sprott gave me the opportunity to do it based right out of school. So I started that in 2001.
Wow. That's pretty cool, but that's a big jump, eh? Mining equities analyst to becoming CEO of a mining company. So why the jump? What's the motivation behind that?
Well, it wasn't there was
a few years.
There was a few years in between, 7 or 8 years. But it's not that crazy of a move, actually. And I know, some of my colleagues that were analysts in the early to mid 2000s are also running mining companies now or exploration companies. So but really for me the route was I sort of reached a point in my career as an analyst where it started to feel a little bit autonomous. And so I was looking for, really wanted to get into the buy side at the time. So I jumped at an opportunity where I could manage money and manage a fund, manage capital, and in the mining space. So I did that for several years, went through, I was in that seat during the end of the bull market, which would have lasted until about 2011. That was really fun, actually, really good. And then, then we entered into a bear market and could sort of see that coming. And so for the next several years, I actually focused on private equity, because I felt, that would be the best opportunity to fund really good, mining opportunities. Understanding that the capital markets, the public capital markets would be potentially very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2012, 13, 14, those years. And then I decided to go out on my own. And in 2016, I went out on my own and started looking for opportunities where I could invest my own capital. And at the time, I was not necessarily looking to take control of a whole company, but I found the opportunity to invest in Bethania in early 2017. And then as a way to fund it, I created Kuya, put my own money in first, and then later in 2018, 2019, I did some external financing rounds as a private company, brought in new investors. So that's sort of how I ended up transitioning from basically an analyst in the early 2000s to founding my own mining company. And really the common thread the whole way has just been the investment process. I've been studying and learning and getting experience in the investment process, particularly as it pertains to mining companies and precious metals even more in particular. And I would say I've spent 80% plus of my career on gold and silver. So it's been a journey, but something I feel really good about.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I want to know more about Christian Aramayo, because he just got appointed chief operating officer, right? And he also helped co-found this company with you, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you two meet? What strengths do you bring to the table, and what strengths does Christian bring to the table?
Well, we first met in Toronto when he was with Kinross. He was a project engineer for Kinross in, I guess, the early part of the last decade, and then we sort of reconnected a few years later when I went out on my own and was looking for projects, really focusing on the Americas, because in my previous job I had done things in Africa and Asia, and I just decided that in a bear market I don't need to go all over the world looking for opportunities. The time zones are a huge pain in the butt. So I really wanted to focus on North and South America. And by this time Christian had moved back to Lima, Peru, and he's Peruvian, although he worked all over the world with Kinross in Africa and Brazil and other places. He had at this point in time moved back to Peru, so we reconnected, and he started helping me look for opportunities in South America. Colombia, Brazil, Peru in particular were places that we were looking together, and then I was also looking at other things separately in North America. And of I would say the sort of dozen or so opportunities that we looked at, or I looked at with Christian and also on my own, Bethania ended up being by far the best opportunity. So we really I went down to Peru several times while we were working on the deal, and we essentially in that way we sort of founded the company together. And what he really brings is his background as an engineer. So I'm a geologist and obviously a capital markets guy and investments guy, but my technical background is geology. Christian's technical background is engineering. So and you need both geologists and engineers in to run a mining company. So I call it sometimes a yin and yang, and so the two of us together, we were able to cover most of the bases on the technical side, and evaluate Bethania, figure out a plan to make it better, optimize it, which of course involved a plant, constructing or designing and constructing a new plant there, permitting it. And Christian from that point on was really able to take control of all the operational aspects of Bethania, and did a fantastic job. So that's really the origin of us working together, and very, very happy to be able to appoint him as COO a few weeks ago.
Nice, he's working in his native country. So why Bethania? What got you guys so excited about it? Why don't you tell us about the assets there, and what did you guys see?
Well, I mean, it was So first of all, when we got there, when we first visited it, it had been shut down for about a year. So it was on care and maintenance. So still in pretty good condition. You know, we could go underground and look at the mine, and so, you know, one thing I really liked about, you know, when we got in there to begin with was how much recent data we had, which is really unusual when you're looking at a private mining asset. You know, to have production results, to have costs, to have metallurgical recoveries. And not to say that that they were optimized, because of course they weren't, but to have that baseline data to know that we can improve upon it was a huge step in the right direction. That as I said, as someone who looked at many private mining assets all over the world, you rarely get this much fresh data. You know, we're talking about 2014, 15, 16. This mine was in production, and this was in 2017. We were looking at it, so we had really good fresh data that we could really rely on in order to make the decisions. Mm-hmm. Then, in terms of the opportunity, what was very clear is that this mine was really run in a capital constrained kind of way. So, I think the previous owners had the right idea in terms of, the mining method, and, certainly, they had done some pretty good work following the ore zones along strike, but they had never had the capital to either do any systematic exploration, the way that we in a public company or would, i.e. drilling. And they also were never able to invest the capital to build a plant at site. And the problem with that is that then when you're toll milling your ore, you're always at the whim of a toll miller, that could be 50, 100, 200 kilometers away, charging you a toll milling fee. You've got all the extra trucking costs, and then you don't get the optimal recoveries either, because you're, even if they do it honestly, which is, mm-hmm. Which is a question, you're still processing at someone else's mine that was set up for someone else's ore. So you're never going to get the optimal recoveries that way. And so we saw the opportunity to build a planet site that we could do it relatively quickly and cheaply, as far as mining projects go. And, with that opportunity, we saw the possibility that we could make very, very high cash flow, and then use that to grow the operation further. And certainly, given the lack of exploration, there's massive exploration upside with Bethania. So it was sort of one of these situations where, we thought we could get it back into production quickly. And at the same time, it's got tremendous exploration potential. And you probably need both of those to make a good project. One or the other is not good enough. You need both. And we had that.
Okay. So you want to get into production, you want to drill, and that all costs money. And I want to talk about, just to help educate the younger people out there, could you explain in simplified terms, what is an RTO?
Sure. So it stands for reverse takeover. And it's essentially a way of taking a company public, but as opposed to an IPO, which is a brand new listing of a new company where the shares are listed for the first time ever on an exchange. An RTO uses an existing company essentially to become public. So it's usually a much smaller company. And what happens is the private company takes that public company over, so that the private company, which has the assets, ends up owning, the majority of the shares of the new company, which is why it's called a reverse takeover. So legally, it's actually structured as the shell company, the public company, is taking over the private company. But because the private company shareholders end up owning 80 or 90% of the shares, because they have the actual assets that are valuable, it's called a reverse takeover.
Perfect. Thank you. That's
and when it's done, when the whole transaction is completed, you're public.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I saw that you guys received your EIA which is an environmental impact assessment, which is a big milestone in Peru. So congrats
Right.
on that. Is there any other permits or regulations or anything else you need before this gets into production?
Yeah, I mean, the main one, the main permit that we need is a construction permit, essentially. So once we have all the detailed drawings of all the basically the work that we want to do, we file that and it gets inspected with the government. And once we tick off all the boxes, we should get it. So we're in that process right now, and it's not what I would call as a risky permit in the way the EIA can be a lot more controversial. And so that's one that is that's one that's we're really obviously very glad to have done that a couple of years ago. Well, I guess we got it a year ago now, August 2020. And the construction permit should be more of a you just follow all the steps and you get it. So we're in that process right now, finalizing all of our work that we need to submitting it, and then getting it, getting the comments and then eventually the approval. So that should be done hopefully in the next several months.
And it is Peru, so I got to ask about the political side. It's made a lot of news, Castillo becoming the new president, but it was a very divided election. It was like almost down the middle, so a very
Right.
divided country. With that being said, now that the election is done and over with, politicians always say what they're going to do coming up to an election. Has his tone changed at all now that he is the president? And what's the political outlook like right there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, a lot of the things that were mentioned in the campaign seem to have been forgotten about. Um, you know, uh, that being said, obviously he will, or we expect that the Castillo government will push, more of a left-leaning agenda. But as you rightly pointed out, the country is very divided. The Congress has actually majority representation of other parties, so not the party of the government. So it's like a minority government, essentially, to put it into sort of Canadian terms.
Mhm.
So they're going to have to work with the rest of the Congress to get anything done substantial. So, yeah, I mean, the inauguration, just happened about a month ago. They're still kind of setting up the government, the cabinet, and everything like that. And we haven't, seen much impact yet, but certainly what's being discussed doesn't really bother us, KUYA, too much. And we feel like we're well prepared to, work with whatever happens.
And it shouldn't slow down the construction permit process or anything like that.
It shouldn't. No, I mean, the country has a lot of well-trained bureaucrats who know the mining rules, and they have a job to do, and it sort of doesn't or shouldn't matter who's in the government. That's one nice thing about Peru, is that their permitting laws leave very little to someone's discretion. It really, if you sort of follow all the prescribed tasks or reports, etc., you file them, you let the you go through a comment period, back and forth if necessary, and then once that process is done, you should get your permits. There's really nobody sort of sitting at a desk saying, oh, I like you guys, I'm going to give it to you, I don't like you guys, I'm not giving it to you. It doesn't work that way. So we don't, I guess never say never. I mean, we obviously we'll have to see what happens, but we're pretty optimistic that that things are returning back to normal.
And the currency there, the Peruvian sol, lost quite a bit of value relative to the US dollar during the pandemic, right? Is that positive or negative for Peruvian operations?
It's probably slightly positive, but what will happen is the the costs in soles will increase to more or less offset it. because much like a lot of Latin American countries, are very heavily reliant on the U.S. for trade and currency and all that, etc. So first of all, some of our expenses were already in U.S. dollars, and then yeah, as I said, we'll expect that although there might be a short-term positive impact from the weaker sol. What you'll see is over several quarters, it will sort of creep up to the cost will creep up to basically so that it doesn't make a difference.
Right. And Peru is a pretty big country, and some areas are more mining friendly than others. So how's the social outlook around Bethania? Are they happy with the mine in that location?
Yeah, we're in a part of Peru that I guess I would describe it as the Central Andes. It's really the mining heartland of Peru. Of course, Peru is a big country, as you mentioned, and there is mining, really from, north to south, east to west, the whole country. But the central Peru, the Central Andes part is just, there are mines everywhere. Every 10 or 15 kilometers, there's a mine. So we're in a really, well-trodden mining district. We do have a local community that we work with. That's basically has the surface rights over the mine, as sort of, that's how the system works there with communities, versus mining companies. So very similar to the ejido system in Mexico, I would say, for those people who know that. But anyway, our community is, we just have the one community that overlays our project, and yeah, they've been very supportive. We have a good relationship. They were, some of them were on site helping us with our drill program, which was completed, about a month ago. And yeah, we're looking forward to working with them going forward as we move the mine forward. I mean, they're very used to the mine being there. So it's not like we're, doing anything new per se. So that makes the relationship a lot easier.
Okay, thank you. So what are your thoughts on your current stock price? Do you think the geological factor has anything to do with it?
Geopolitical, you mean?
Geopolitical, yeah, sorry.
um,
I hope not. I hope not the
yeah.
geological.
Well, yeah. So I do think it has something to do with it. I think if just if you look how our stock has traded over the course of this year, when the election started to make the news, we definitely saw our stock impacted. So I mean, I've been investing in international mining deals and companies for 20 plus years now, and these jurisdictions sort of go in cycles. They're in favor, they're out of favor. Peru definitely has taken a hit. It's affected our stock price in the short term. I don't believe it will affect us in the longer term, but in the meantime, maybe it will open up other opportunities for us where we can, as a stronger and more advanced company, we can take advantage of the sensitivity around Peru right now. So we're not necessarily looking at it as a bad thing right now. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely affected us. I think if it wasn't for that, our stock price would be a bit higher.
Okay. And when starting this company, sorry, back in 2017, did a macro outlook have a big effect on this decision at all? Because you understand cycles too. Do you think, are you pretty bullish on the silver market?
Well, I have to say that it was more of a call on the industry, I would say, and Looking back in 2017, I certainly, you could kind of sense that we may be starting a precious metals bull market. And as an analyst, I look at gold and silver, very, very much in the same light. The ratio will change, and silver should outperform in a precious metals bull market. And so the gold silver ratio will go down in a bull market, goes up in a bear market. Back in 2017, you could kind of sense that gold at least was starting to turn. Silver really was not there yet, but now it has. So yeah, there was a little bit of that, but more in the industry. What I saw in 2017 was companies that that I had sort of grown up in my career with as the major, or as the silver players, the silver mining companies that investors bought when they were bullish on silver, had started to kind of leave the silver sector to go and usually acquire gold assets. So they had, and this wasn't just one company, this was many companies had just sort of seen greener pastures with gold, started buying gold assets or building new gold mines, and essentially not being there. They weren't really silver companies anymore. And so, when you look at the opportunity, when investors do get really bullish on silver, they want to buy a silver mining company. They want to buy a company whose most of their revenue comes from silver. And there were fewer and fewer of those companies in 2017, and then I think we've probably lost a few more since then. Pan American was a big one when they bought several new gold mines and really tilted their weight in gold. And they were, for my entire career, the biggest silver miner out there that was a public company. So that I really saw an opportunity to sort of get into that void. And I still see that opportunity. I think you definitely get a lot more value as a producer, though, than you do as a sort of a junior. So that's why I'm very excited about the opportunity to get Bethania into production relatively quickly here in the next year or so, because it should make a massive difference in terms of our valuation.
Yeah, and you don't want to just get Bethania into production. You want to do some drilling, and you have been doing some drilling. So are you happy with the results so far?
Yeah, we're thrilled with the results so far. Definitely like to do more drilling, and we will. But the initial 5,000 meter program that we did, it confirmed what we already knew, which was, or what we were very confident about, was that the mineralization was open at depth. But we were also, besides that, we were also extending some of the secondary veins along strike and at depth. We were intersecting new veins that we, either didn't know about, or they were sort of marked on a map, but they'd never been actually tested.
Yeah.
So we were able to, add a lot of new veins in terms of our pipeline of opportunities just within the immediate mine area. And then we also were hitting some thicker zones as well, which is in a way not surprising, because the way that they had been exploring this vein, or this deposit, was just tunneling along the veins. And so when you do that, you're not really testing what's in the wall rock, and sometimes it's mineralized, and it may not be visible to the naked eye, but you can still have 300, 500 grams silver there, and you'd never be able to see that with the naked eye. So we're seeing some areas where that were 2, 3, up to 7 meters in drill thickness, whereas the average mining width of this is less than a meter. So we're finding some much thicker zones, which is really cool.
Cool. And I had Dr. Quentin Henney on the podcast, and he unfortunately just retired as chairman and director of your company, right, to pursue what he likes to do. So good for him. I'm happy for him
Yeah,
at Capital. But
exactly.
do
Yeah.
you think that'll have a material effect on your company?
Well, Quentin is still going to be advising us. In terms of having access to his geological brain,
Hmm.
it shouldn't affect us. And I look forward to discussing opportunities with him in the future, just as we did when he was the director. So it really shouldn't make a material impact going forward.
Thank you. So now let's talk. What about your cash position and finance, and how are you looking at financing in the near future?
Not in the near future. Excuse me.
Mhm.
We did a financing in June, so we are, we raised $9 million in June. So we're still in a very good position with that. And what we kind of decided to do there, and it was a little bit, I guess the market kind of took us in this direction, but it's worked out quite well. That will allow us to essentially continue to move forward with some of our exploration that we wanted to do. We didn't want to put a pause on that while we finish all the permitting for Bethania. And then, at some point when we do pull the trigger to build Bethania, we will need a bit more money for that, but it's not that much. It's probably in the order of maybe 15 to 20 million Canadian, something like that. We'll have to see when we get our final capex estimate, but should be in that ballpark. And by then we'll have more results out. We'll have results from our Canadian project as well, which we haven't talked about. So I think it's going to work out for the best in a way, to be able to do that and essentially wait until we have Bethania really ready to go before we have to raise any money and dilute shareholders if we indeed do decide to do an equity financing. There's also opportunities to do debt or some other kind of combination of the two. And there's a lot of interest to do that because Bethania, should be a very profitable mine, and that's what all of our technical work is indicating. So it's something that a lot of people would be comfortable lending to. So we'll just have to see what's best for the shareholders when the time comes. But it's fortunately we don't need to make that decision right now.
And you just touched on your Canadian project, so I wanted to pick your brain on that and why that acquisition, because I thought you were wanted to focus on Bethania, getting into production. So why acquire the Silver Kings project?
Well, we are focused on Bethania, and really that has not changed. Really, that being said, though, when I started Kuya, I did conceptually see the opportunity to be a consolidator in the silver space, and again take up the mantle with some of these silver companies that have now gone and become gold companies.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, we will likely need to acquire things. Bethania definitely can get a lot bigger, but there will come a point when we want to have a second and third mine in the portfolio. So Silver Kings was really an opportunistic kind of situation where company First Cobalt wanted to sell or spin out those assets. They'd become non-core for them. What we really liked about the Silver Kings assets was that although there had been a lot of work done on them recently, and so we had a pretty extensive database to look at, they were really looking for a kind of a different deposit style. So they were looking for a low grade or open pitable kind of cobalt deposit that just was not there. But they were hitting in some cases what I would call the traditional cobalt style, and by this I mean Cobalt the town, and the camp, not the metal, but the silver mineralization, the high grade silver mineralization that this district is known for. Where you can be getting 500, 1,000 or thousands of grams per ton silver over narrow widths, and that's really what was mined in this camp for 80 years. So when we go and we think about Bethania, which is a narrow high grade vein mine, which why do we like that? Because we can produce we can do small scale production or targeted production, use smaller equipment, which is cheaper to buy and build, but still produce a meaningful amount of silver. Millions of ounces a year. Whether it's 2 or whatever, depends on how big you make the plant. But you have that opportunity for meaningful silver production with very little capex, and that was really the story with Bethania, and we see that potential at Silver Kings as well. And so it's a bit of a weird, it's not the way most people think, but we're almost like taking our Peru experience and importing it back to Canada, because Canadian mining companies for the last 20, 30 years, they're always thinking big. They want to build open pits. They want to do everything bigger, build billion-dollar, open pit mines. Well, that's not what we want to do. We want to build really small but profitable operations that can produce a significant amount of silver. And we see the opportunity to do that. It's definitely earlier stage than Bethania, so it will take us, a few more years to get there. But that's the opportunity, and for what little we paid for it, we felt like it was a good bet.
Sure. So what's the permitting like and stuff there? What needs to get done to progress at the Silver Kings project?
Well, the Ontario permitting system is kind of interesting because we have a combination of patents and claims. So on the patents, it's basically ownership. So you own the mineral rights, and you can drill without any permits. You can, you obviously have to manage the environmental side and be a good steward, etc. But it's a lot easier to do it. So we've actually been able to do some drilling on our patents already. And then with the claims, which is what it would be referred to as Crown land. So it's sort of owned by the state, in our case, in the province of Ontario, or the country, and then what we have the right to mine it if we find anything. So those do go through a governmental permitting process, and we will be permitting some of those to drill in this fall. So we're going through that right now. As we move things forward to production, again, depending on whether you put your mill on a patented claim or a patent or a claim, there's a bit of a different permitting process. It will be easier. We actually have a permitted mill site. So depending on the size of the mill that we want to build, we think we could actually possibly build it on the patented claim the patented site that we already have. And so the permitting will be easier. It doesn't, I mean, there's still permitting that needs to be done. There's still, government reporting that needs to be done. There's First Nations consultations that need to happen. So we will be doing all those things once we get a little further along. But it actually, could work out very nicely for us in that front.
Nice. And that's mining country there too, right? So it's all mining.
Absolutely. I mean, the district that we're in, was, mined, pretty intensely from the turn of the 20th century to the 1980s. And then, gradually all the last remaining mines closed in the 80s, and, everyone kind of left and started doing bigger things. The companies like Teck and Agnico Eagle actually had their start in the cobalt camp, and had mines there. And, some of the properties that we own actually were former Agnico or Teck properties. So, it's kind of interesting piece of Canadian history there. And really in the last 30, 35 years, very little work has been done. And so there is definitely an opportunity to go back and look at this with fresh eyes and look at reinvigorating this this area.
Perfect. Thanks, David. I appreciate it. You answered a lot of my questions here, but I
Yeah,
want to make sure we have time for the vault segment. So our
sure.
current segment, it's not about Kuya Silver, it's just mentorship like advice.
Okay.
So I ask 3 questions. They will not be available on YouTube, but they will be available on the audio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and on my website, thewealthorderspodcast.ca. But let's get into the vault.
Okay. That's my advice.
That's well said. That's very nice advice. What if I were to tell you that over 80% of my portfolio is royalty companies? I think it's
Well, I could understand why you would do that. They're definitely lower risk. I think in a bull market they will underperform mining companies, but that doesn't mean they're bad, right? That they'll still go up.
mhm.
And uh, and maybe that risk, the lower risk makes it still a smart investment for you, and you'll hopefully make 10 baggers on your other 20% that's not in the royalty companies, and you'll end up doing really well, without taking a massive amount of risk. So I think that's actually a really good strategy.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation, but I do like letting my guests close off. So here's your chance to say whatever you like, either about your company, just advice, anything you want. Just please close this off.
Sure. Well, look, I won't, hopefully, hopefully you can see that, there's a great opportunity with Kuya to build a brand new and growing silver mining company. But, I guess where I would leave it is, just to sort of start your journey learning about Kuya, go to our website. It's kind of old fashioned, but it's got a lot of good information there, kuyasilver.com, KUYA silver.com. And from there, you can sort of jump into our social media, or you can get an appointment with management to talk about the company if you want to do that. And, I just recommend that people start there, and hopefully we'll see you as a shareholder soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.